Thanks, Amy Rose. Are we letting people in, Amy Rose, or is everyone already arriving?
Turns out the room wasn't correctly locked, and now we have attendees arriving en masse. We have begun.
Sure. Do you want me to give it a minute or two?
It's recording and we are ready.
Do you want me to kick off?
Yes, I do.
Thanks, Amy Rose. Welcome to Blockchain Week. This is a crazy idea come to life in a very short period of time. Before we commence, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and their connection to land, waters, and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. This was a really, really crazy idea, I think. You know, this is an attempt to build a community. This is an attempt to bring attention to a community, and I am excited. And that's saying something, because I usually have a level of excitement that is pretty high. We need to know that we're recording the session. It's important. We'd encourage people to comment as well. So if you want to jump in, make some comments, make yourself known. That would be terrific. Today is meant to be about you, and today is meant to be about communities. But before we start telling the story of what's to come in the 4 days, what I'm keen to do is go back to the future a little bit and identify some of the OGs from the space and just talk about how we got here to begin with, because I think it's important for everyone to recognise that everything is built on the shoulders of others, and there really needs to be a recognition that someone has come before us and they've done a lot of hard yards, and this is a snapshot of some of the people that have done that. So I'll introduce the first one. It'll be Ron. After Ron will be Karen Cohen and Adriana Belotti. But Ron is he's an OG. He was there pushing for subject matters that are still important to us many, many years ago when there was no one there. It wasn't just the Wild West. There was nothing there at all. So my role here at the Blockchain Australia is a direct result of Ron's roles and efforts preceding it. So Ron, I'll kick off and let you tell us the story of how we all began.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you for the very kind introduction. This impressive week-long agenda is a testament to your hard work, professionalism, and most certainly your dedication. The association is very lucky to have you at its helm and your entire team. And a lot has changed in a short time. 8 years ago, when we formed the original body, the Australian Digital Currency and Commerce Association, the certainty of success of this industry was far from assured. In fact, by many accounts, it was expected to fail. When we started this journey in early 2014, the industry was very much in its infancy. A Byzantine GST taxation issue was imminently threatening to cripple our DC exchanges at their birth, and we had few friends. The only media narrative at the time had us pegged as a bunch of modern-day pirates, Mt. Gox scammers living off the dark web in our parents' basements. There were no Coinbase record listing stories, no FinReview write-ups, no open doors to corporate Australia. We were the ugly, premonitory duckling of FinTech Australia. But we were bold, we were brash, and very idealistic. How can you not be after reading the Satoshi white paper? And perhaps naive enough to create a peak body and to be taken seriously. Our community, however, decided we would do what no other digital currency community worldwide had successfully done, that we would ask, in fact, we would insist on regulation, that we in outlying Australia, far flung from the big brass financial capitals of London and Wall Street, would ask for the rules so that we could play by them, that we would be leaders, not followers. And so I got a meeting with ADCA, an actual sit down with the regulator. I also quickly got one with the ATO, AUSTRAC, the RBA, and a bunch of plucky up and coming politicians, perhaps more out of curiosity than a desire to help, but meetings nonetheless. So I did what any self-respecting person would do to go down to Canberra and try to change government policy. I decided to dress like a banker, and I purchased a three-piece suit. Now remember, this was 2014 and the price of Bitcoin just broke over $300 that month. For the $1,000 suit, I cashed out 3 Bitcoins. For the hike to the nation's capital, I cashed out another 3. For the written plan done by a consultancy firm at Mates Rates, I cashed out another 5 Bitcoins. With that, we got the meetings. We hosted a world's first government relations forum, bringing all of those same folks back into the same room to make sure they were all on the same page. And from that, we got a Senate inquiry. We changed the taxation laws, set the road for regulatory, workable framework via healthy government collaboration, and got our industry a seat at the table. Today, the half-dozen little brassy Bitcoin exchanges that rallied behind ADCA are now joined by some of the world's largest Bitcoin players in our ecosystem, including Coinbase. and another 430 hopeful participants on the AusTrack digital currency registry. Since that time, we've commissioned the world's first proper national digital currency market report with our partners at Accenture, hosted or co-hosted 2 global crypto conferences alongside world leaders at the G20. We've participated in more than half a dozen trade missions overseas with partners at Austrade by taking promising Australian crypto companies, blockchain startups, and scale-ups with us, often joined by a number of corporate members in places as far-flung as Shenzhen to downtown Manhattan. We worked to create the Australia-China Blockchain Alliance via MOU. We successfully lobbied to see the creation of the Parliamentary Friends of Blockchain. We even received a global public endorsement and nod of support from Sir Richard Branson for a world-leading organization. And finally, most recently, have been able to share the Australian model of success via our now global efforts through the International Digital Asset Exchange Association, ADCA, consulting with the G20's Financial Action Task Force out of the OECD at Paris. The goal, of course, is now to bring global regulatory alignment amongst 37 FATF member nations and the world's centralized exchanges, all for cashing out $3,740 worth of Bitcoin at a time. Or, as my mind likes to remind myself awake at the early hours of the morning, the bargain price of $914,651.10 at yesterday's rates. Well, what's 900 grand between friends? And the banks, well, the past 8 years have certainly been an interesting journey with them. Last week, the former CEO of Westpac, Brian Hartzer, was boasting about his Coinbase investment, icing on the cake, boasting. And good on him, Bitcoin was and is a smart investment. It's just a little hard for some of us to forget that his very organization actively refused to bank some of the very exchanges he now celebrates. And in fairness, as a bank CEO, he was hardly alone in trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater. This week, another CEO of a big bank was also in the media, saying the time had come for regulation for the buy now, pay later industry, a growing competitor to his lending business. I agree, but why stop there? The banks should be regulated better too. In fact, the historic practices of denying digital currency exchanges and other blockchain businesses banking and other such functions is downright uncompetitive and should be outlawed. Every law-abiding citizen and Australian business should have a right to be banked and a right to service our customers, and we need to be protected. Let's have clear rules because we know we will stick to them. That's what makes our industry special. We didn't need a royal commission into our practices like the rest of the FS industry. We weren't regulated kicking and screaming. We self-regulated with the endorsement of government following the inquiry. In the vacuum of where none existed, and we did this benchmarked against the AFSL regime in good faith and to protect our business's bottom line. We set an example. The blockchain industry has worked with and through government to get the best outcomes for its members, but there is more to do. My cheeky accent aside, I don't want the Australian blockchain industry to become a regional outpost of North America or European enterprises in this space. I want Australia to continue to lead. The next Afterpay, the next Canva, the next Atlassian is in this very room and at this very conference. The next big exchange, the next big idea is already here. The only thing stopping our rise isn't a lack of creative talent or entrepreneurial leadership. The only thing that can stop us is a regulatory environment that thinks small, of old industries more interested in protecting themselves than building for the future. 8 years ago, we were the new kids on the block, the young upstarts. We were the ones begging the banks and FS industry for a seat at the table. A lot has changed. Their time is passing and ours has arrived. To the same CEOs of the same banks that tried to stop our growth, we say, despite the shoe turning, we want to work with you. That while we no longer need a seat at your table, you can certainly have one at ours. That the energy, enthusiasm, and excitement of our industry is contagious, and that we are prepared to share it with you. Let's draw on the mutual strengths of one another's lessons and successes. Let's ensure Australia continues to be the underdog that hasn't seen a recession in 35 years, never had the GFC touch our shores, and continues to see our financial services backbone, whether incumbent or next generation, continue to stand tall in the world's top 10 most valuable year after year. To the Australian regulators, ASIC, ATO, and AusTrack, we remain the exemplars of industry partners that we welcome working together, as that's how we get the best outcomes for all. So as this week of events gets underway, I wanted to remind you of what really matters. Not only that Steve Vallas is doing a great job, although he really is, not only to remind you that we are leaders, that we have already set the international stage for how regulation should be done cooperatively with government, Not only, though we are rising, we want to work with everyone, the banks, the government, and industry. No, I just really wanted to make a confession, and one that I've done today, that I cashed out $914,651.10 just to buy a suit and have a bunch of meetings in Canberra, and that I don't regret any of it. And for that, Blockchain Australia, you're welcome.
Thank you. Anyone that finds the time to sit with Ron, he's got a hell of a story to tell that fills in a lot of these details as well. For all that work, we know we're just at the beginning, and that's the challenge of the ecosystem. That's a challenge of the community for us. We are just starting. These are voices and people that you can trust to understand the complexity of the issues that we face. So, Ron, thank you for starting this this journey for us. I'm really excited to be a part of it at this stage, and I look forward in years to come to handing it over to someone younger and more enthusiastic than me as well. I'll move on to Karen Cohen. Karen, let you say your piece about your little part of the blockchain community.
Thanks, Steve. Hard to follow after Ron. Welcome to Blockchain Week, everyone. Amazing day to start. My name is Karen Cohen. I'm the Deputy Chair of Blockchain Australia. I joined the blockchain world in 2017 when I joined the Blockchain Centre. It's hard to believe that I'm listed as an OG here when it's really only been 4 years. Other industries would be considered new, but blockchain years are like dog years. I had to learn about Bitcoin and blockchain really, really quickly. At that time, Bitcoin was 17,000. The community was pumping. The startup community was pumping. Bitcoin meetups were full. People had to watch in the garden because they couldn't get into the blockchain centers. They were watching a live stream. Only 5% of Bitcoin buyers were women. Hobby Australia had a launch, and I asked every project to add a female advisor to their team. I joined the Women in Blockchain movement, and I ended up in the Financial Review. I banned all male panels, and I'm still on that crusade. The biggest blockchain project was the Commonwealth Bank supply chain project, shipping 17 tons of almonds using smart contracts and IoT. It was a big deal. In 2020, moving forward, the price was 7,000 to begin with and 18,000 for Bitcoin. And after the fires, we formed the Crypto Fire Alliance with Blockchain Australia and Finder. We raised $27,000 to show the power of crypto for good. We sold an NFT racing car from Animoca for $10,800, which was raced in the F1 Delta time. It was a 100% digital race car. And we resold it recently to Tony G from Vilnius in Lithuania for $430,000, adding another $30,000 back to the community charity fund. We launched the blockchain roadmap. The number of women buying Bitcoin doubled to 10%. COVID hit. The government bought the COVID app. We couldn't even get a standard QR code app in Melbourne for checking in to coffees. I wonder what we'll use for vaccine tracking. 2021, here we are, PayPal, JP Morgan, Elon Musk, MasterCard, they're all joining the crypto movement. Bitcoin price was over 80K Australian dollars this month. Number of women in buying Bitcoin is 15%, 150% increase. 60% of Bitcoin buyers are still aged between 25 and 44. Crypto is still a young man's domain. But as the Diversity and Inclusion Officer for Blockchain Australia, I will continue my crusade to include and educate more women into this sector. Except for some amazing resilient startups, including Civic Ledger, Power Ledger, Everledger, and AgriDigital, a lot of the original startup companies in blockchain have come and gone. But with DeFi, we're seeing another amazing raise. I recently heard of a company that raised $11 million in 1 month and turned away another $30 million in investment. I look forward to hearing from the startup community in Melbourne on Wednesday at YBF at 9:30 a.m. with Kaya. And I hope that you will all join us. We'll have a drop-in co-working and events day, some great examples of some Algorand projects as well, and a panel on privacy. So please come down and join us in person. Since Black Lives Matter, we also talk about culturally diverse panels, not just gender diverse panels. So after getting my head around Bitcoin and blockchain 4 years ago, I now have to learn about DeFi and NFTs. I went back to my trusty YouTube to learn about the next phase of crypto. I learned you can buy Ethereum, convert it to a stable coin and loan it or stake it, and someone will pay me interest on my crypto asset using smart contracts to ensure it all goes through. This complexity and risk makes me wonder if DeFi is even more about young boys with big toys. I look forward to talking to the exchanges this week about how they are tackling education and opportunities for a diverse user base. You can also own a digital artwork or NFT, which puts my sister's 80s Tamagotchi to shame. This technology is moving faster than anyone can comprehend and faster than the regulators can keep up. This is taking us further and further into unknown territory. Blockchain Australia, led by Steve Vallas, is creating an opportunity to talk to the regulators and to ensure they can comprehend the pros and cons of this nascent industry. So what now? Well, as exciting as all this is, I am frustrated. We have the technology, we have to build it. Traditional VCs are now asking blockchain startups to remove the word blockchain from their pitch decks on account of nervous investors. And yet the government has offered the first $3 million in funding for 2 blockchain use cases, liquor and minerals. The government is leading by example. They are literally willing to fund projects. KPMG, EY, Deloitte, IBM, Consensus, Block 8, Microsoft and R3, they're skilled, they're ready, and they're able to build blockchain projects. It's time for the industry to lead the way. If you have an idea for a blockchain project, you can work with the universities, Monash, Deakin, Melbourne, RMIT, all have students who can build a POC with you, but you must go past proof of concept and build a commercial project. Last week at our launch event, Chloe White also stated that the top skills requested will be blockchain. With my HR hat on, I also want to ask employers to start training their staff in blockchain technologies. Don't just demand programmers with specific skills, but really invest in the future of your staff. When I started in blockchain, Solidity programmers were demanding up to 200K, but smart employers were parking their staff in front of online courses to learn. The Blockchain Collective have recently launched their online diploma in applied blockchain, and they've never been busier. Last week, I had coffee in Ackland Street, St Kilda. Because of COVID, so many shops are now permanently closed, but on the plus side, the cafes have sprawled out into the street. And on a rare Melbourne sunny day, I said to the waitress, I was so excited to sit by myself for breakfast. As I ordered my coffee, the guy at the table next to me said, hey, I'm thinking of buying Bitcoin. Has anyone watched those videos from Binance? What do you think? Well, that was the end of my solo breakfast. I started to talk to them, and of course, as always, they asked me when to buy. And I said, do you know when the best day to buy Bitcoin is? No, today. Thank you very much and enjoy Blockchain Week.
Thank you, Karen. A valuable contribution over a long period of time. And I think those of us who have been in the space for a long time, there have been slings and arrows. And the key characteristic is resilience. And Karen has shown resilience in the face of sometimes criticism, sometimes praise. You keep showing up. And I think that's incredibly important. I hand over now to Adriana Belotti, a true community builder in this space. She shows up week after week, podcasts, face-to-face meetings. You can get a hold of her. She'll talk about the space. Adriana, thank you in advance for what you've done so far, and I look forward to hearing your observations.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure being here with you, kicking off the first Australia-wide Blockchain Week. I met Ron, Karen, Steve, and many of you here in person and watching today at a meetup. Meetups provide a welcoming forum to discuss a variety of topics, and they have been instrumental in pushing forward the innovation that started unfolding in 2008 when Satoshi first published their white paper. Meetups provide, I attended my first Bitcoin meetup in August 2014. And I admit I was very confused at first. But growing up in Brazil, a country that has been known for economic mismanagement, made it easier for me to understand what I identified as Bitcoin's first value proposition, providing an alternative, a way to vote against bad governance and systematic corruption. Of course, I wanted to learn more, and there was some information online, but at the time, meetups were the only in-person alternative where you could meet someone and ask beginners questions. In January 2015, when I put my hand up to help Jason Williams organize his Bitcoin meetup, there were only 4 crypto groups in Australia: Bitcoin Brisbane, Bitcoin Melbourne, Bitcoin Sydney, and Bitcoin Professionals. When Ethereum Frontier launched in 2015, Bitcoin Professionals became Blockchain Professionals, as both Jason and I thought it was important to keep an open mind and foster inclusive communities. Around the same time, and for that very same reason, the Bitcoin Association of Australia changed its name to Blockchain Australia. I'm very proud of being vice president of the board at the time and voting on that name change. Today, only 6 years later, there are over 100 crypto meetups across Australia. About 45 in Sydney, 20 in Melbourne, 23 in Brisbane, 30 in Perth, 4 in Adelaide, 2 in Canberra, 2 in Darwin, and 1 in Launceston. And I'm sure Adam has something to do with that. And there are thousands of crypto blockchain communities around the world. And I've been to many of them all over. It's like when you get to a new place, you have friends wherever you go. Only you haven't met them yet, just have to attend the meetup. In technology, changes can be very fast-paced. Having both online and in-person forums to explore the latest findings and try to make sense of everything that's being developed is how the blockchain industry has grown. Different groups cover different blockchains like Ethereum, Algorand, and Cardano, as well as other types of distributed networks like Hashgraph. They also cover trading and how to get started. And the thing about these groups and why they work is that they help decentralize knowledge and learning, a perfect match for open source decentralized tech. They bridge the gap between industry and formal education, especially during times of fast-paced innovation. Most groups are welcoming to all people, to all knowledge levels. Some encourage more women participation, which is something I, like Karen, very keen to champion for. What they all have in common is that they are run by people who want to share their knowledge and help others along the way. If there isn't a group near you, you can start one. You don't have to be an expert. You can share however little you know. The more meetups, the better. And yes, 2 people at a pub counts. All meetups started small. We have a fantastic few days of events ahead of us, and most nights there will be a meetup to attend. If you haven't been to one yet, you are definitely missing out. So join a group near you, network, get a bevy. Who knows, your next co-worker, co-founder, or even your meetup best friend might be just one event away. Have a great blockchain week. Thank you.
Thanks, Adriana. Here comes the big finish. It's going to be a big week. We've got 130 plus speakers, 50 sessions. I think we've got so many conversations that are going to happen across the country. Each day is a little bit different. You all live somewhere, and the whole point of the way this has been crafted is that you will find yourself in these 4 days. Day 1 is primarily around education. We want people to get a sense of it. We follow on immediately with Chloe White and Stefan Lavera about Bitcoin. Where did it all begin? That's going to be the conversation. Thematically, today's about education. If you're early in the space and you need to know what's important, start with day 1. Day 2 is about digital assets, and it's an important conversation, traditional assets into emerging digital assets, digital exchanges, and DeFi. So there's a lot of interest there, particularly with respect to the regulatory implications of it. Day 3 is about builders. We're talking about encouraging Australian businesses, and it's something we have not seen in this country. Blockchain, DLT, and cryptocurrency businesses have not been supported. They've been left out of conversations. It's time that stopped. So we want to encourage builders, and we want to encourage inbound investment. Australia is open for this industry to grow. And day 4 is a day in 2 parts. We want to talk about the difficult things, the things that are going to be very challenging for regulators to talk about, for government to talk about. We want to have those conversations, and we're inviting people to participate in those conversations. And at the end of the day, we'll talk about our successes, the National Blockchain Roadmap, the work that's been done between the Department of Industry and its partners to grow the stories, to tell people, tell the world that we are doing really well, because that's what the world thinks. They're looking in, I can tell you, constant conversations about Australia leading the conversation. That's what we seek to do. It's important to recognise the sponsors of this event. BTC Markets, CoinSpot, Algorand Foundation, and Blockade are the primary sponsors. We're a membership organisation. This is not anything other than funding that comes into the organisation and gets pushed into the community. We really respect all those that participate in the community. We're grateful for the financial support that's shown us with respect to this as well. So the key bit to take away is we want people to be involved. Make noise this week. We deserve to be heard. We want to be heard. We want you to be seen. We want your businesses to be elevated. So have an opinion, make a conversation happen, and you don't have to agree. I mean, the beauty of this space is we have different views, and the aim here is to surface those different views as much and as frequently as you possibly can. That's what we'd encourage you to do. You'll find us on all the channels. Sign up to these events. As I said, there are many, many events over the next 4 days, and I'm looking forward to Friday when these events stop and we've had a chance to literally get in front of hundreds of thousands of people. That's the aim that we're running this whole series of events for. I think that's pretty much it. I'll do one last thing. For those that are in the room, can you just, I know this is impromptu, can you just stand up and just come to the back of the room for a second? Just, it's you too, John. This is impromptu. This is the message for us. And this is the important part of the rooms that we're in. This is the face of the blockchain industry. We have people from academia, we have people who are leaders of DCE exchanges, we have startup people, we have lawyers. There's always lawyers. I used to be a lawyer, there's always the lawyers. This is the face. You know, these are people whose views can be trusted when they give them to you. So that's what we're encouraging you to do over these 4 days, is reach out to people, these people who've travelled to Sydney for the most part to participate in this week. So we look forward to a big 4 days and maybe a big 4 nights, and we want you to be heard. So please do that. Enjoy the next session in a couple of minutes, and welcome to Blockchain Week.
Yay!